Here's what the Dexter TV show doesn't want you to know. The books reveal a Dexter so disturbing, the series had to rewrite him, just to make him watchable. In the Battle of Dexter, book versus show, it's clear that the TV series managed to do something most adaptations can only dream of. It made the protagonist, a sociopathic serial killer, competent and somewhat sympathetic. In stark contrast, the book version of Dexter Morgan is a fumbling mess, a character so riddled with flaws and inconsistencies that it's a wonder anyone would root for him. The show may have relied heavily on plot armor, but at least it managed to make Dexter seem capable, as opposed to the laughable wreck that stumbles through the novels. Book Dexter is an absolute train wreck. This version of the character is consistently caught in his own mistakes, getting his ass handed to him by everyone, only to be saved by a convenient deus ex machina. In fact, the series often feels like a comedy of errors, with Dexter barely managing to keep his head above water. He misses critical opportunities, makes baffling decisions, such as failing to kill someone when he clearly should, and ends up losing Rita, his secret identity, and his grip on basic competence. TV Dexter, by contrast, is a cool, calculating figure, a far cry from the bumbling idiot that the books serve up. The adaptation took a fundamentally flawed character and somehow managed to turn him into a more competent, more menacing figure. It's almost as if the writers looked at the source material and decided, let's not make the lead character a walking disaster. An improvement, for sure, but one that casts a glaring light on just how poorly the books executed their protagonist. While it's true that both Dexter versions rely on a hefty amount of plot armor, the show's Dexter at least does it with flair. It's truly laughable how he somehow manages to best an armed dokes while in handcuffs, because that's exactly what every grounded, believable character does, right? Of course, the show's portrayal also leans into the dark vigilante angle, where Dexter becomes a sort of anti-hero, a murderer with a moral code. This element, while still flawed and often self-serving, allows viewers to engage with him more easily than the pure sadism of the book version. In the books, Dexter kills with a far more detached, sadistic pleasure. There's no struggle with his dark passenger, he enjoys what he does. He's essentially a psychopath with a penchant for playing God. The show, however, softens this a bit. While Dexter still kills compulsively, there's an effort to imbue him with some semblance of struggle. The showrunner opted to frame Dexter's killings within a narrative of twisted justice, which in turn made him more palatable to viewers. After all, nobody really wants to root for a character who enjoys the act of dismembering his victims for pure pleasure. The television Dexter's internal battle with his dark impulses makes him more relatable, even if that relatability is about as twisted as a pretzel. Perhaps more importantly, the show knows how to humanize Dexter just enough to make the audience buy into him. Unlike in the books, where Dexter is portrayed as cold and utterly devoid of empathy, the show gives him a small amount of emotional depth. It's a critical decision, especially when you consider how much television in the early 2000s thrived on anti-hero characters. Think Breaking Bad and The Sopranos. Dexter had to be someone we could relate to, someone we could love in spite of his horrific crimes. In order for the show to succeed, Dexter needed to be less of a monster and more of a morally complicated figure. The writers wisely leaned into Michael C. Hall's charisma, making Dexter someone audiences could root for, even as they cheered on his brutal acts. This is where the show's moral ambiguity is both its strength and its flaw. The show consistently toys with the idea that Dexter's killings, though criminal, are somehow justified because he targets the guilty, a sentiment that continues to be one of the show's most divisive elements. Is he really a vigilante, or is he just a sadistic killer with a twisted sense of self-importance? The show tries to have it both ways, and it's not always successful. In particular, later seasons struggle to balance Dexter's increasingly monstrous behavior with the need for him to remain a sympathetic character. The creators want us to think Dexter's actions are morally gray, but sometimes they just look downright black. The show never fully commits to the notion that Dexter is a monster, even as he continues to sink further into his darker impulses. Contrast that with the books, where Dexter's lack of empathy and the sadism of his actions are never hidden. In fact, One could argue that the books are far more honest in their portrayal of Dexter as a pure killer, one who gets off on the act itself, not just the satisfaction of justice. In the novels, Dexter doesn't just kill because of his dark passenger or some misguided sense of justice. No, he revels in it. There's a chilling moment in one of the books where Dexter dismembers a victim while they're still alive. It's the kind of gruesome scene that would have never made it past a network censor, but it underscores just how far the books are willing to go to show the full extent of Dexter's depravity. To be clear, this is not necessarily a bad thing. The books never try to redeem Dexter. They never make him someone we're supposed to root for. Instead, they present him as a cold, calculating monster. And in doing so, they create a much more disturbing portrait of a serial killer. The show, on the other hand, has to balance Dexter's more monstrous traits with his need to be relatable to the audience. That's why we see moments where he struggles with his dark passenger, moments where he genuinely tries to connect with people, and moments where his actions have consequences, whether he likes it or not. In the end, the show's version of Dexter feels more like a product of its time, a character designed to fit neatly into the mold of anti-heroes that dominated television in the late 2000s. He's morally gray, but he's still likable enough to keep audiences tuning in week after week. The books, meanwhile, present a Dexter that is far more cold-blooded and brutal, perhaps too much so for television audiences at the time. Dexter's moral ambiguity may be the show's defining trait, but it's also what makes the character, and the show itself, so endlessly fascinating.